particularly love doing story time for babies, which, to be honest, many librarians do not, because you're really doing it as much for the parents, because you're modeling for the parents how to engage their babies in enjoying a book, enjoying words and language and music.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful future. Today, we want to talk about early life literacy and interaction and how important it is for us. Recent studies suggest that children who begin reading for pleasure early in life may benefit from improved mental health and perform better on cognitive testing as they enter their teenage years. A study of more than 10,000 young adolescents in the U.S. found recently. A study published in Psychological Medicine showcased research done in the UK and China, which found that 12 hours a week was the ideal amount of reading to help with cognitive development. We want to do all we can to support our children's development early on and give them the best opportunity to write their own stories and live full, happy, and healthy lives. Our guest today has devoted her life to helping kids do just that. Pamela Groves, lovingly known by her audience as Miss Pam, is a children's librarian and the host and founder of Baby Wordplay, a read and sing-along program for families with babies and toddlers that uses evidence-based approaches to support cognitive and social development and have lots of fun while doing it. Baby Wordplay podcast has been downloaded over 1 million times since its inception after the global COVID-19 pandemic, and its repercussions inspired Pam to create a way to help parents learn how to offer their children opportunities to learn and connect through singing, reading, and interactive play. Coming from Jamaica to the United States as a young girl, Pam knows personally the value of early reading for children and the impact it can have on their lives. Pam, thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for inviting me.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I know that not only do you have so much to teach us about showing up for our kids and encouraging early life reading and learning, you also have so much to teach about just embracing a positive outlook on life and going after the things that inspire you and creating something important to leave for your community as well, because that's something that you've always been doing. You've always been so interested through your work and having an impact on your community. Tell me about when you got started moving here from the Caribbean. We were talking off camera about the experiences you had with that. What inspired you to first become a librarian, which you did for almost 30 years, and then to take all of the lessons you had from that experience and turn it into your work with Baby Wordplay?
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, I come from a family of teachers, and so I really have a lot of, I came with a lot of passion already for teaching young children. And I came to librarianship through my own children and spending so much time in a public library that I just loved the environment and decided to pursue a career in it. As a librarian, your job as a children's librarian, you select books and you serve the public, and you do story times. And that story times was always my favorite part. Well, that and the books, obviously. I loved doing story time. I particularly loved doing story time for babies, which, to be honest, many librarians do not, because, you're really doing it as much for the parents, because you're modeling for the parents how to engage their babies in enjoying a book, enjoying words and language and music. So, but I loved doing story time for babies. So I became the baby time, librarian. Became known. So I developed my own little sort of techniques of how to engage. I'm talking, from 2 months old. We're really talking infants. Many people might think, well, what good is it to read and sing to, a 3-month-old? And it's always worth repeating that from in utero, but certainly from birth, a baby is here to learn, is here to absorb things from their environment and from their loved ones and care for them. And however, a lot of times parents don't necessarily know how to engage their babies. They're not, they're not talking to you. You can't really have a conversation. They look like they're just sitting there like a lump, so to speak. But so, the fact that I could model for families how to read to the babies and sing and make eye contact and explain to them how important that is. Finger plays, twinkle, twinkle. Every time I show a parent the difference between singing Twinkle Twinkle and motioning in front of the baby's eyes as you sing, they're always blown away because the fact that the baby has a visual in rhythm with the words is just a magical moment. So that's just, one small example. So I loved story time, and I worked in the public library for about 25 years before I was then diagnosed with a life-threatening disease, which caused me to change somewhat my course. So I hope that answers the question.
Does. You brought up some questions and some thoughts for me when you were talking about the importance of modeling and how you recognize that. And I think it's so interesting what our niche is, right? How we choose that and how you saw. What I'm hearing is, you saw a space where you could really offer something that you believed was really important, but there seemed to be a gap, right? There was a teachable moment there about parents have tools that are free readily at their discretion that are not being utilized to help improve connection with their baby and help their baby on their learning journey. And I reflect back on, now we live in a time of very intentional parenting in many places, many families. However, many people grew up in households where, it's funny. I don't know if you've seen this on social media where they ask kids now some common phrases that I would have heard growing up, and they ask them what they mean. So things like, I'm going to start a phrase and you finish it. And so they would say, children should be seen and, right? And for all of us, we would say not heard, right? We know the intentionality behind that phrase. It doesn't have to be completed. And we knew it from a look, most likely, right? You get a
Yeah.
look and okay, children are to be seen and not heard. And that was the reality for many children. And now, often when you say that to children, they'll come up with the sweetest answers. They'll say, and loved
I
and
have not
taught,
seen that. Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool.
It's a really cool thing that I've seen many times on social media, people asking their kids these phrases that, were, for lack of a better term, I think this really says it succinctly, dog whistles for kids, right? Like you hear this and you know what we're trying to tell you quickly. And they're not dog whistles for kids anymore because I think we are in general trying to parent as a society in a different way. But that means that we need people like yourself who do have these skills. And maybe we're blessed to grow up in a family that did model that interaction and that connection to teach that to parents, because maybe it's not something, for one reason or another, whatever it was, not something that was modeled for them. And that's the beauty of being able to find these resources online. And instead of shaming parents for, well, gosh, don't you know you need to look the baby in the eye and move and wiggle? No, just model it. And when you try something for the first time, especially, I love how you talk about using your body, when you see how that feels and how it feels in relationship to your baby and you or to another person, it is really, truly transformative in how much of a connecting experience it is.
Absolutely. All of that I agree with. So the notion of modeling is really key to everything that I do, because whether it's how to hold the book, how to create, one of the things try to remind parents is try not to have many distractions when you're reading to your baby. Really try to make it, if it's 10 minutes, just make it all about you and your little one for those 10 minutes. Phones away, screens out of sight, just, zero in, because it sends the message that what you're doing is important. It sends the message that you value your child, so you're going to give them your undivided attention. And children respond, babies respond. I want to keep using the word babies because we're really often when I talk to people, their mind goes to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. And my podcast is certainly for 3 and 4-year-olds as well. However, I just believe so strongly that you really start when you bring that baby home. As a phrase I like to use is when you bring your baby home, you're now a homeschooling parent. And with the sense that part of your task is to pour into your baby, and you pour in words, you pour in music, very important. You pour in numbers. A lot of people don't know how important numeracy is to literacy. Anyway, I could go off on many. As you can see, I'm very tangents. Modeling is really key. It's not shaming. It's not making people feel less than. Sometimes parents don't feel comfortable singing. They think they can't hold a tune. I always reassure them that your voice is your baby's favorite voice.
Mm.
So there's no reason to feel they're not judging you. They're not judging you. So,
Yeah, they don't know, they don't know Taylor Swift yet.
eggs or Beyonce. They say you don't have to
They're
sound
not
like
comparing
Beyonce.
you.
You'd be surprised that there's a little bit of like maybe the parent was told as a child that you can't sing, that you can't hold a tune, and maybe you've built up this feeling, and then you don't even think of singing to your baby. And how sad is
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, I
So,
mean, we
yeah.
know through literature and through songs because so many of our favorite books and poems are set to song. That's for a reason, right? But that has gotten lost along the way. I don't know your experience as a librarian. I'd be very curious to know if you think we have a generation of middle-aged people who are afraid to be seen. And those are the people that are tasked with stepping into the spotlight in front of their kids to
Hmm.
teach them those things and perform for them. Because I think there is a really, now that so many people in this midlife period are coming to the point where they're deciding to, as we talk about on the show a lot, reclaim their stories. A big part of that process is recognizing they deserve to be the narrator of their story. They deserve to decide what happens. If it's a musical, it gets to be a musical. If it's, a dark, adventure trilogy, that's the story they can write. Like they can decide. They can
Hmm.
decide how their character is going to live and what the novel of their life or the musical of their life looks like. And I think it can be hard to teach that to your kids if you didn't experience that growing up.
Mm. That I mean that makes sense. I again I'm so focused on the baby, the first 3 years. I think for parents of children under 3, generally, this is a time when you fall in love with your child. You want to you're just, you know, all in. You're all in. You want the best for them. You make decisions based on their future. And so I think I always call those first 3 years as sort of the tender years when you are most vulnerable, quite really, and most open. So one of the things enjoy about Baby Wordplay, and well, now that it's a podcast, so when it first started, if I can just share this piece because I think it's an important distinction. So when I first started Baby Wordplay in Philadelphia, um, the idea was when I left the library after my health crisis. The idea was to build neighborhood story places, neighborhood baby theaters. I had different names I would use in different settings. Baby theaters, story places. And so the first one, which was in my neighborhood where I lived in Philadelphia, was, I created this very magical space and began to hold twice daily, story times for families with children under 4. I mean, any child could come, but it was targeted at babies 0 to 4. So, parents, nannies, grandparents, uncles would bring their babies in for story time. And there was a little stage. It was also a bookstore. It was a very special business model. It was also a bookstore. So I sold books as well, just picture books for that age group. So it was a brick and mortar idea. By the time the pandemic hit, I had 3 locations, 3 branches in Philadelphia in 3 different neighborhoods. I had a staff of 5, and it was just a really beautiful business. And then within a few months, I closed all 3. And then my daughter was pregnant with our first grandchild in London. She lives in London, actually. And I was grumbling about everybody's going to screens with their babies. We all know it's screens are not good for the babies, but it was COVID, so I got it. I understood. And she said, "Well, why don't you make a podcast for babies? Not about them, but for them." And to be honest, I didn't even know quite what a podcast was. They were still so new in the media world. So I immediately went to do the research and thought it was a great idea. During, you know, 2020 into early 21, I recorded the first 80 episodes of Baby Wordplay podcast. Uh, and what's lovely about that is that it goes all over the world. I have, as you know, having a podcast, it gives you an entree into everywhere. So I have listeners in practically every country and I get notes from them so it's helping parents all over learn how to engage with their babies through books and music and language. So yeah,
Yeah, and you're modeling that. And it's interesting because when you got started was a time when many parents were forced to homeschool. You talked about that early period of life, infancy as, the first schooling, and it's homeschooling for most. But that was a period of time where many people who never expected to homeschool their
absolutely.
children who are preschool and above, they were really forced to step into that role and maybe feeling that they weren't armed with what they needed to have tool wise to do the best job. Now, you had made the decision to homeschool your children for a period of time when they were young. What inspired you to do that? Why was it important for your family? And what skills and tools did you take from that personal experience and roll that into your work as a librarian and now the podcast?
Yeah, so we have 2 children and my first child, my son, clearly had some challenges. We didn't know what they were when he was sort of 4 or 5 as he was getting older. He's in his early 40s now, so, it's quite a while ago. And he just wasn't doing well in school, was having some different, some issues that we didn't feel any school perhaps could actually we weren't sure any school could serve him. But honestly, we were about to go back into the public school because we'd done both. And then I read an article by, and some people will know his name, David Guterson. He wrote Snow Falling on Cedars. I can see myself right now reading this article in the Atlantic. And the title was English Teacher Homeschools His Kids, something like that. And they lived in Seattle. Anyway, I read the article, and by the time I finished the article, I had decided we were going to try homeschooling. And I woke my husband up. It was early morning, and I said, "Guess what? We're going to be homeschooling." But remember, I had a background in education. My mother had a school for 30 years, my sister. So I came at it with a lot of confidence. I recognize that that's not everybody would have. So I came at it with a lot of confidence and excitement. And so I literally read the article in August and my kids didn't go to school in September and they were home for 5 years. Yeah. All through middle
Mm.
school, pretty much. So, how that ties into becoming a librarian is, again, I was spending so much time in the public library and got to really know what a librarian does, a children's librarian, got to know the materials, the books, just the whole world. And I just fell in love with it. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And having my own children and helping or traveling along their reading journey with them while we homeschooled, we read aloud a lot. I'm a big read aloud fan. I mean, at all ages. So I even read to them when they were 9, 10, 12 years old. So I really felt like I had a good foundation to share with others things that, and I felt really worked for us. Both my children are avid readers, my daughter especially, and and again, that can go either way. They can be strong readers where we're interested in they're young and then change their mind. I mean, not change their minds, but you know, get distracted and. But I do believe if you make time for reading in your life with your children when they're young, you are just doing the best thing for them. So with Baby Wordplay, the podcast, I get to do that from they bring baby home. So I get parents, if they listen to my podcast, I get them thinking about what can I do to, in each moment of the day or throughout each day that you spend with your baby, what can I do to help my baby get ready to learn to read? Which sounds crazy because, they're so young, but that's actually what you're doing. It's getting them ready to learn to read and to enjoy words and language, which is just a big, really a big, and to also help parents bond with their baby through this action. One bonds with your baby in many ways, but this particular way of bonding can take you into the different stages of your child's development so that when they enter kindergarten, you already have this way of relating around books and, numbers. And so you take it then as they get older, you already are building this positive way of interacting around, these subject areas and these. So I think beginning at the beginning, I just can't think of any better way to spend time with your baby and your toddler. Yeah.
And certainly during the pandemic, many of us, most of us, were stuck at home, or if we
Mhm,
left, it was
mhm.
because maybe working in healthcare or transportation. And so we were stuck. We couldn't travel. And born out of that, I know many podcasts like yours for very early life. There's another really wonderful podcast we've had. The creator on the show, the podcast is Culture Kids,
Mhm,
that gives kids a passport to travel
mhm.
from their home, from their device. They're listening and they're learning about the world. And the important thing to understand is that for many children, whether it's during the pandemic or just because of circumstances, this is the way they're getting to hear music, relate, travel is through books, through their libraries. And so their library card can serve as a passport and as an admission to the world's best schools. It's incredible what we can find in books, but it starts with, as you said, right? A lot of us envision our children going to the best school and having a wonderful concept of the world and education, but we may forget that we all started with board books or even with
Yes.
cloth books, right? The kind of books that can go in the bath, right? So whatever way it is you can get your children to have that relationship with books will serve them moving on. So I think that's beautiful what you're doing. Now, tell us about how you structure the Baby Wordplay podcast specifically from an episode perspective, because I know you're very
Mhm.
intentional in how you structure things to optimize engagement with kids, as well as, like we said earlier, the modeling aspect for parents and caregivers.
Right. So each episode, the longest episode is probably sort of 16, 17 minutes. So short is important. They all pretty much all start the same way and finish the same way because, children really like that kind of bracketing and knowing when something begins and when it ends. It really, well, when I first did it, I realized I was speaking too fast. So funny. You learn as you go. I'm now in my fourth year of doing it, third or fourth year. So I've slowed it down so much because again, I'm doing it for the baby's ears. Primarily, the baby is the primary audience. Obviously, the parent is equally there, but I they're but listening to it together. So I like to think about it that way. And so we always start with the same song. which I actually would love to share a little piece of it with you during this because it's we could maybe could we do it right now?
Yes,
It's
let's do it.
okay. So all the episodes start this way pretty much. Although I've now added some different ones. But if you clap your hands up and down, I tell the parents to do this. So I will be speaking. Clap your hands up and down, up and down. We say peanut butter, marmalade, and jam. Let's say hello as low as we can. Make your voice very low. Hello, hello. Peanut butter, marmalade, and jam. Let's say hello as high as we can. Hello. So, and then we do fast and slow. And I won't do the whole thing, but so I'm directing the parent in the first couple of episodes. It's a sort of how to, position your child close to you, make eye contact. I give them some guidelines, and then so that song. Everybody loves it. I'm sort of my second name after Miss Pam, I think, is the, peanut butter something, because every time I meet a child who hears me, who has heard me on the podcast, once this is this is the sign from their parent to the child, as if to say, this is Miss Pam, peanut butter. So it's my middle name, peanut butter. So the other part about the episodes is that I intersperse, not too much, but I try to intersperse some evidence-based facts for the parent. But I don't want a lot of talking because it just messes with the flow of the episode. But I will, I'll say something about numeracy and how important it is to count with your, make counting be a part of your day, when you're on out, climbing steps, count the steps, all sorts of things that books have a lot more richer vocabulary than spoken language. And this is why we want to always be reading to our children, because we never use the same kinds of words that you see in books, children's books. A lot of times you don't use them in day-to-day language. And this is how you build your child's vocabulary. So I try to intersperse, in episodes, a little bit of that so that they really start to understand that this is all fun, but it's not only fun. It's really science-based, research-based. And then I do some Spanish because I speak some Spanish. So I do some Spanish songs. I do a little American Sign Language, because one of the things, again, I say is what you're doing as a parent is exposing your child to the diversity of language. So even if you don't speak a word of another language, throw in some Spanish words, learn this particular Spanish song or French song or whatever, just to begin to get your baby's ears tuned in, right? So there are a whole host of things that, play through the episodes. I have 130 episodes currently, and I just started a couple of months ago a toddler phonics, because phonics has become such a hot topic, and it's so more. We just need more good stuff with phonics. So the toddler phonics is going well, but yeah. So yeah, I would say that's the basic way I do the episodes, or way I think about them. Yeah.
It really speaks to the value of evidence-based content like you provide. And I don't know if you did this intentionally or not, but this speaks back to why it's so important to have people who are educators and who have the background you have providing this information, because whether intentionally or not, you've learned how to communicate to kids. So you're really giving parents and caregivers a cheat sheet. So going back to, as we were doing this together, I realized it's very rhythmic. What did a
Absolutely.
baby just leave? They left the womb, which
Mm,
is a
mhm,
very rhythmic
Ooh,
environment.
I have thought of that connection. I love that. Mhm,
And I guessed that you did it because intuitively you knew it was the right thing to do.
mhm,
And this is the beauty of, I think, having these conversations of saying, like, that's interesting, just like music in general. So much of music connects with us because what are we hearing in our ears all day long that we tune out? But it's there. We hear
mhm,
it. We hear
mhm.
a rhythm.
Mm,
We hear a rhythm all day long. And so
mhm.
when a song really captures that sound of that rhythm, even that rhythm itself can make us feel so seen and so heard and so connected, because so much of what we're doing is sharing our experiences through literature, through life, right? That's, we want to connect with one another. And so music, and even the simplest sound like what you created with your hands, it's tapping into a shared experience, one that your baby
Absolutely.
just had in the wound, right? And in the womb,
Mhm.
and bringing that into the present moment. So now they feel safe. They already feel safe. They already feel like, I know this one. I know this
Mhm.
song. And then you're adding in new things. Like you said, okay, the first few episodes, we're just training you how to do this, this, this. And then we can add on to it, because now these things we know. And I've seen you talk in one of your episodes about, counting your fingers. You talk about spiders and how it's 8,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And
mhm. Yep,
teaching all of these little lessons
absolutely,
that,
and then
yeah.
this is sign language for spider in ASL. So I go, 8 legs. So when you're doing that face to face, just think of all that that child is absorbing in that moment. They're learning that this is sign language. They're seeing 4 and 4, 8. Sometimes I have an actual spider. So then you're talking about, and then you show a spider. So you can just have all these very rich layers of learning that is just really, it's just a feast for a baby, for a feast for a baby's brain. That's what I would say. It's a feast for a baby's brain. And it's fun. That's the other thing I just keep stressing with parents is that this is the part of the fun of being a parent, because there are a lot of hard parts. But this part is actually all fun, all fun. There's nothing about this. And even if you're not a strong reader, that's the other thing. I've worked in many different environments, and your parent may not be literate. But does that mean you can't still use books and sing and recite little poems, all sorts of things? You can still fill your baby's brain with words and language. So I think, if I'm honest, I think that the first 3 years of a child's life, not that you can absolutely do wonderful things later in life. Nobody's saying that everything ends. However, I don't think anybody would disagree that if you can really put a lot in those first 3 years of life, otherwise you are to some extent playing catch up.
Hmm.
I just don't think you can really deny that. Not that you can't remediate or enrich or, the research has shown that just those first, because of all that pruning in the brain and the experiences that a baby experiences and how important, you can't get that back really. So that's really why I became devoted to babies, because I just feel like that's the place to start. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. And
been very exciting for me, I have to say.
it's been exciting. Well, I found you on Instagram. I have
Hmm.
a saying of my podcast. I say, stop doom scrolling and listen to a podcast. That being said, I do enjoy a good doom scroll, but I have to always do it with purpose. It has to
Right,
be with purpose. And I
right.
also have to say that the gods of the algorithms have always been kind to me, because really the people who come on my feed are people like yourselves. They're just amazing people with amazing purpose, sharing it with the world. And so I came across you and I saw how incredibly inspiring it is what you're doing. I wanted to highlight something that you said earlier about being intentional with the time you read. I think setting out, we're going to read for a distinct period of time every day can be a good goal, and not a big time, a short time. You said, if it's 10 minutes, right? If it's 10 minutes, we're going to do, to be really intentional and dedicated with that time. I had an expert on the show, Colin Corby, who speaks about digital detoxing and, minimizing time with our phones and our devices. And I think we all have been at the park, at a restaurant, after recess, after school, whatever, and you've seen the parent that is really sucked in the moment into the world of their phone, and their child is asking them over and over and over to look at them. And that's not said to shame the parents. It's really easy for it to happen. And when you see it happening and you hear a child saying, Dad, look at me. Dad, look at me. And because that distraction is there, it's not happening. We're thinking, can we, one, acknowledge that we all probably do it to some extent just because of the modern world we live in and the need to use these tools. Okay, how can we deliberately tell our kids they need to hear that they matter more than this thing, that this is a tool, right? It's not a toy, it's a tool. And sometimes mom or dad or grandma or grandpa have to use this tool. Sometimes their teacher has to email someone on the computer, right? We have to use our tools, but the tool is there for us, not we worship this tool and we're stuck in it. And so when I was hearing you talk about trying to avoid distractions, avoid digital distractions, especially during the time that we set aside for reading, it made me think to something that Colin said on the show about that by the way, just it gave me chills, happy chills when he said it. And he said, when you go to coffee with your friend to say, and I've got my phone right here in case school calls. So to say, right, to say, you know what? I'm so happy to be here with you. There's no one that I would rather talk to right now, and there's nothing I'd rather do, no place I'd rather be. I'm going to turn off my phone and I'm going to put it away. And being really deliberate about that and say it. And that's a practice I have with my son for reading at night. For our ritual, I always say, hey, I'm going to silence my phone so that it doesn't bother you. That's the thing that, because he's a bit sensitive to sounds. So we got into this
Mhm.
habit of like, I'm going to silence this so it doesn't bother you at night. And then he feels connected to me. Like, okay, you're here at night. Even when I'm asleep, you're here and you're going to make sure my environment is good for me. That's one thing that it does. But two, it's me telling him like, you matter more than this device. And I got in this habit of saying it. And now he kind of waits for me to say it. And so it's just a part of our ritual. He loves his rituals. And so I wanted to share that because when Colin said that, it filled me with so much emotion as an adult. The thought of someone being so intentional about sharing that they were going to give you their true, full attention in a day and age where that is so hard to come by.
Absolutely. It's really a gift when you give somebody your full attention. That's the truth. And um, yeah, the phone is really yeah, it's a challenge for all of us. Not just well, it's the phone, but one of the things I wish parents would do less. All of us, I don't personally do it, but is the headset. So even if
Mm.
it's not on, walking around with the headset at the playground, I mean, well, I think a lot of times they are talking to, are listening to something, even when they're with the
Mm.
children. And they may think because they're not looking at the screen, but it's still, it's still taking you out of the moment. And your child knows. Your child knows. So, I mean, I know parents are stressed. I mean, I'm the last one to. I was a young mom and I was very stressed out. However, it's just the most important job you'll ever have. And so I think as much as we can, recognizing that depending on the level of resources you have in your family, which is very key. I think the more resources you have, family resources, you can probably be more present, quite frankly. It's probably easier for you to be more present because you have more help in general you know. So I want to always make that caveat that I know that not everybody is on a level playing field. You're a single mom, you have two children, you might want to put your children for a bit front of the television, while you get something done, or dad. So, but I just think we always have to be mindful and make those choices mindfully. So, The podcast is a nice alternative to screens because even though you access it through the screen, although I'm going to be have my own Yoto player, I've been approved to. Do you know the Yoto player?
Yeah, but tell our
Yes.
listeners about it.
Yeah, so it's this. My grandsons love their Yoto players. It's a device that's harking back to a different time, so it's not connected, can't be connected to the internet at all. But it's a device where you can purchase these. I don't know what they're called, but Yoto cards. But they're like look like a credit card size, thin, and you put it into the device, and it plays a story, music, different artists have Yoda cards, but you have to go through a process to be approved. And I was approved a few months ago. So I'm going to be creating my own Yoda cards. But it's it's better than the phone because it's not a screen. It just looks like a little radio, an old time radio kind of thing with a thing. So yeah, screens are with us, and obviously the all around the world they're trying to, address different issues. But there is no question that under 3 years old, under 2 years old, the first 1,000 days of life, apart from talking to grandma, a little bit, apart from saying hi on FaceTime or other family members, I just don't think babies need to be looking at any screens. I feel pretty strongly about that. Uh, I love that I can offer the podcast, which is screen free. And once I'll just say one another thing about things parents have told me about the podcast. It's wonderful when you're driving in the car. That's probably the best place, but not everybody obviously drives. So, but if you're doing a long drive, I got a email or a review from a parent driving to Florida from New York a couple of years ago. They told me they listened to me the whole way. I felt sorry for the parents, but they were thrilled. They were like, "Oh my goodness, little Mary, or was quiet the whole time. Fell asleep, was happy to listen again." So they were writing me to thank me.
For the free babysitting.
Yeah, yeah, especially cars. Kids car rides are hard for children in the car seat, so that's a really good time.
They really are. And I love how, the focus can be because someone may argue, oh, well, there's a screen. You want us to see these things. Yes, but you can learn, you watch, you learn, and then you do it with your kiddo.
Exactly, exactly.
And even now with my oldest being 12, I can tell you there are silly songs with little dance movements that we do most days in the
Oh, I
car.
love that. Love that.
Because we'll have little down times. We'll be parked, maybe we've got a few minutes, it's cold outside, we're stuck in the car for a few minutes or out of the rain, what have you. And we want to fill that time. We usually do it with either silly songs and dances that we created or
Hmm.
something that's going on. They love to change the words to songs.
Songs.
Yes, they love to make them their own.
I love that.
There's such a funny one. It's a Taylor Swift song. It's called Canceled. And it's a little bit, it's one of her, she's good at a clapback song. She's
Uh-huh.
been known for that for a long time. And so she has a song called Canceled. And she says in the song, "Welcome to my underworld where it gets quite dark." And my 6-year-old, God love him, but this is a 6-year-old boy thing to do. The first time he heard it through, he says, "Welcome to my underwear where it gets quite dark." And
I love that.
we
That's wordplay.
died.
That's
We
wordplay.
died. We died laughing because we were like, true. It's very true. Oh my gosh, it was so funny. Off topic, but gosh, it reminded me of that. Oh, and he's so good. He's so funny and cheeky the way he changes the words to songs. Like you wouldn't
Right,
believe.
right.
But we love to sing a song, do a dance, have a little routine to fill those short periods of time. So if you as an individual have not come up with that on your own, then you can have the help of Miss Pam and Baby Wordplay, and she can give you some routines that you can incorporate into your interactions with your babies so that you get in that habit too. So that then when they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and older, like mine are, they're still wanting to be silly and sing and dance with you, take chances, be big and loud in this world, write their own stories, because we know that the gifts that that will give them throughout their lives are just compounding and incredible. And it really starts with building this foundation of a love of learning and a willingness to connect and believe in yourself. There's so many wonderful things that can come from this incredible world that you've created online for parents to then take into their world and
Mhm.
connect with their kids.
Absolutely. I feel like it's my gift to the world in a very grand sense, but um, because there's really nothing quite like it, to be honest. I haven't been able to find any other podcast that's really so targeted to the first 3 years of life and that's done in this mindful way. So I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it. It was a very happy sort of accident. Well, accident, but it was a silver lining to a very hard time after COVID. So I
Mm.
give thanks to my daughter for the idea and that I ran with it. So yeah.
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did, Miss Pam.
Thank
So
you.
before we end the show, we have a little game here we like to play on Talks with Dr. Shafer with our experts where I just ask you some fast paced questions. You can't think about them too long. You have to kind of answer off the cuff what your heart says. Are you
Okay,
game?
I'll give it a roll.
Okay, awesome. So these are questions for a children's librarian, right? The library is kind of a quiet place. So we don't often ask librarians a lot of questions other than where can I find this book? Is it in stock? So, it might be nice to have these questions answered here where we're allowed to speak in our normal voices. What is your favorite children's book?
Oh my goodness, that is one of the hardest questions to ask a children's librarian. Well, I'm going to say right now, the picture book I would stick with picture books because that's my age group for the first 3 years. But I love Peekaboo Morning by Rachel Isadora is one of my favorites. It's really meant for the first year, 2 years of life. So Peekaboo Morning by Rachel Isadora.
I love that. How many books should you optimally be checking out at one time to maximize impact? Because like when kids are 2 or 3, sometimes they're like stack, 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 stack.
Right. I would say under two, repetition is important, right? So you don't need a lot of variety. In some ways, you actually want more repetition and familiar books because every time you read the book, your little one is getting something new out of it. So I'm going to say you don't need a lot of books. I would say in the first 2 years, if you take out, every 2 weeks, if you take out half a dozen books, that would be great.
That's
6 books.
wonderful. 6 books. Okay, I
6
love
books.
that.
When they get older, they have opinions and they want to choose, and then you might have to bring home 2 dozen. But when they're younger, 6 is good every 2 weeks, I think.
That's a good rule of thumb. And something that I think is really interesting that I'm finding now as my son is in kindergarten is I think it's also really fascinating to go back to those board books and those really simple books when they're older, because a lot of words that you were teaching them through reading to them, they may still not understand those words and they're at a different cognitive place and they're making different neural pathways when you read them the books, right? Don't just say, okay, my kiddo's 3 or 4, we're never reading these books again. It might be interesting to circle back to some classics that, or seasonal books, for example, to read when they're older that they read and loved when they were little.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the book that popped into my mind was Where's Spot? You must know that book, the little dog. Spot is hiding. You lift the flap. Well, my daughter and I talked about this, a couple of years ago, and my grandsons, but she realized that they read that book a lot for the first couple of years. But then she realized that my first grandson, in one of the pages, he thought there was a confusion about where Spot really was, and it was the mom and the little puppy Spot. So anyway, all I'm saying is that at some point, he was like, it was clear he was like, "Oh, there's Spock," so even though he'd been reading it for a long time. So, and then sometimes books are more sophisticated, and so even though they're picture books, don't be mistaken to think that good picture books for young children are not sophisticated. So, yes, I agree with you.
They're
Don't
so
don't
sophisticated.
come back to them even when they're a little older, and you might be surprised, you know?
So sophisticated, so concise, and the proof is in the pudding. We enjoy learning from them too, right?
That's the
We're also customers.
critical, or else we won't buy them or borrow them.
Exactly, exactly. So that tells you, how thoughtful children's authors are about how they're delivering their messages as well. They have a
Absolutely.
huge audience. They have a huge audience. So, unstructured playtime at the library that doesn't involve reading. Yes, something to schedule into your weekly time as a family.
Is that a question? Sorry.
Yes. Yes, we're doing the rapid fires, the
Right,
rapid
right,
fire
right.
questions.
Unstructured. If you're lucky to have a public library, accessible to you, getting into a little library habit with your child, you can't go to the story times at the library, get a library card when they're of the age, make it a regular stop in your week, because you're building a connection to a place where you're going to want them to feel comfortable in later as well. So yes,
Exactly. As a librarian and lover of books, when you're enjoying a book that you own, not one from the library, and this is important to note for this question, do you ever make notes in the book?
absolutely yes.
Dog
I
ear?
I dog ear the books. It's my book and I want to digest it in whatever way. And it really helps me to highlight, check mark, so I can quickly come back to a particular section. I think yeah, reading with a pen or pencil is not a bad thing.
You heard it from a librarian. That's okay. You don't have to feel bad if this is your practice. I know
No.
I'm that way, especially with the books I want to learn the most from. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And like
Or even
also I'm
just a
like,
nice quote. I love language.
yeah,
So there's nothing, something that a character says, and I'm like, I just love that. I want to, I don't want to forget about it. So I'll highlight it or, dog ear
I
it.
love it. I love it. Okay, so we have your permission as a librarian, but not with the library books, not with the library books,
No, you have to
everybody.
use sticky papers. You have to write somewhere else.
Exactly. Okay, so for kids, you've worked with a lot of kids in libraries. I have an opinion on this. I'm curious yours. So for kids, do you prefer books with a dust jacket or without? And what do you also find kids
Ah,
prefer?
so that's such a weird question. I mean, not a weird question. I don't mean it in that.
It
I
is, but
don't,
it
it
matters.
is,
As a
but
publisher,
it
it
does
matters.
matter. Yeah. I have to confess, I'm kind of over dust jackets and
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't, yeah. Okay, good. I wasn't sure. I handled them a lot through my library studies and working as a public library. And yeah, I think it's kind of wasteful at this point. I don't think we need dust jackets.
Yeah,
So
agreed. Agreed. I've never printed a book with a dust jacket.
yeah,
I'm not into
yeah.
them, but I know some people are big
Right,
fans. So curious
right,
to hear
right.
from a librarian what you think.
Yeah. The
Board
only what
books.
I like about having about a dust jacket is when I'm doing story time, I love taking off the dust jacket, especially certain like a kindergartner and sort of making this show of like, even books have jackets. Something about that can kind of capture their imaginations, but then you can keep the dust jacket after that.
Always gets ripped or lost. My kids always disliked them vigorously and took them off, like really disliked. Board books. What age are they great for?
Board books have nothing to do with age, I'll be honest with you, meaning that you can have a board book is just a form of binding, right? So their books, they tend to make them for younger children. But I'm going to tell you my little secret about board books that worry me. And when I had the bookstores, I was very conscious of this. Some board books are very heavy.
Hmm.
Some board books should not, personally, if any publishers listen to this, you should not be making a 9 by 11 board, with I don't know how many pages. If that drops on a 2-year-old's toe, it will be breaking their toe. I've never heard
Mm.
anybody else say this but me.
Yeah.
I used to complain about this. I'm like, no, it's better to have a paperback. And even if they rip it, it's better. That's if you're going to do, but, or make it smaller. But big board books are not for young children. So I'll say
Mm.
that. But they're wonderful for, the standard size board book is great because, yes, babies will chew on books. That's their first way of interacting with the world is through their mouths. So I always would say, don't scold your toddler for biting a book. Don't, just be gentle with them, take it away and show them how a book should be used, if it should be held, but don't shame them for chewing on their book because for a long time, babies need to do that. So,
Yeah. And there are great
yeah,
cloth books too. I know we had a
yeah,
great Dr. Seuss cloth book that had instruments in it and it did all
yeah,
sorts of things. And that was really fun for kids too when they were in that place. And also the ones that have foam inside. So those can go in the bathtub. Those were a
right,
big hit in our
right,
house
right.
too.
One little point that I like to also suggest to parents is I love books. I don't, I have no problem with books with buttons or, as I say, books that are trying to be toys a little bit. um, I have no problem with them, but I always would encourage parents to limit those books in their collection. If you have your home library has many books that are trying to be toys, it's not really the message you're really trying to send to your children that a book as a toy. So you should just, really keep that in mind and not be always drawn to flaps and buttons and, bells and whistles, because then books will kind of feel boring, right? If they just open and close. So just it's just a little reminder. Again, I love some of those books. In fact, I just bought one, Bird, you press for bird songs, in the book for my grandson. But don't make that be a large part of your home library.
I love it. It's good advice. Although I have to say, I'm going to send you a link for a journal that our kids love. I think it's called Wreck This Journal. It's gonna rock your world. But again, it's the kind of thing you don't get from
Wonderful.
the library because by the time the kids are done with this journal, it is just decimated.
Oh,
It is
interesting.
not
I
how
want to
you
say
treat a book.
book. Interesting. I'm going to have to look at that and I'll give you my opinion.
We'll have it, once this comes out with the promos, we're going to have the follow up to the Wreck This Journal. I love that.
Oh, that's very funny.
Last question, bedtime routine. Why is
Mm.
reading before bed an important part of early reading routine for kids?
So I love bedtime reading and it's pushed a lot and for good reasons. It's a great way to calm the mind, move your brain into, the stage of getting ready to sleep. It's cozy. It has all that. However, parents sometimes at the end of the day are incredibly tired. They're thinking about tomorrow's, what they have to do the next day and errands they have to run and whatever. And so sometimes bedtime is actually not the best time to read. So I think read whenever it works in your family. Don't feel like you have to do bedtimes every night, but I think it's a good goal. That's how I would say it's a good goal, but doing it anytime is better than, being tired and not enjoying it, not being able to really, you know, give it your all at bedtime because you're tired and you just want the child to go to sleep. Or read,
Yeah.
also choose short stories. That's what my daughter always reminds me. She's like, when she's not wanting to read, she's an every nighter. She reads to my grandkids. She or dad reads to the grandkids every night. So, but sometimes she'll make sure that they don't choose the the longer books.
Providing options is key, but you choose like which of these two
Exactly,
that can be
exactly.
really,
Like
really helpful. So they have a choice, but
exactly,
you're
exactly.
curating the environment for the
Absolutely.
evening. That
Yeah.
works in our
So
house too. I love
so it's
it.
a good goal.
I love it. There's no shame in this game, and shame has no place in learning. It's not effective. And what a
Not at
great
all.
way to get introduced to connecting and reading with your children. No better way in the world than Miss Pam's podcast. How can people connect with you and follow along, subscribe to the podcast to start this journey with their kids?
Yes, thank you so much. This has been a great pleasure. The word www.babywordplay.com is my website. At Baby Wordplay on Instagram and Facebook. And yes, you can subscribe for as little as $99 a month. I always have some episodes free. However, have access to the whole catalog of 130 episodes, which really is filled with so much good stuff, vocabulary and books, and then you pay a small fee. So, yeah, thank
That's
you.
wonderful. Everyone, thank you so much, Pam. And as you mentioned before, for one family, it is what took what could have been a really long car ride, a really loud car ride, to a joyful one for their little one. So
Yeah.
you
Over.
never know. It could
Yeah.
be a lifesaver.
Yeah. Once the baby knows it, once the baby is familiar with it, especially, then it's like they just settle in.
Yep, they hear
Yeah.
that I'm doing the heartbeat sound again, the clapping sound, and then it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
we're ready to learn, ready to engage. And so thank you so much, Miss Pam. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. Shall I finish with my how I close the episodes? It's very
Please.
short. My hands say thank you with a clap, clap, clap. My feet say thank you with a tap, tap, tap. Clap, 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 and tap, tap, tap. And now it's time to sing goodbye. And then I go into my baby wordplay closing song. But we do the my hands say thank you at the end of each episode.
That's beautiful. And we say thank you to you, incorporating the ASL. It's just so beautiful. I'm so grateful that you were here to share the amazing work you are doing with our community of storytellers. And I also want to thank our storytellers for being here with us on the show. We appreciate your time and would love to hear your takeaways from this week's show. Please share it with someone who would love this discussion as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Talks with Dr. Shafer where you enjoy podcasts so that you don't miss out on any of the inspiring episodes we have coming up. Until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.